Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome to episode 7 of Meat for the Grinders Season 2, our series dedicated to Necromunda Dark Uprising Battle Reports. Meat for the Grinders are a series dedicated to Dark Uprising Battle Reports. It is a campaign set in the final days of Hive Arcos, where Chaos, Xenos, and Order clash for control of a collapsing Hive City. And on today's episode, my two friends, the Kiddo as well as Senior Chang, will be fighting it out in this scenario. My little sister's playing the Children of the Deep Friah from House Cawdor, while my buddy Senior Chang is actually starting his very first battle report in our campaign by playing the Scavvies. This gang is called the Lords of the Pit. It is a mutant outcast gang, using mutant outcast gang rules in order to create his gang, and he'll be fighting for the very first time in our campaign. He really liked the way our battle reports were going for our very first campaign week. He wanted to know if he could jump in, and we said sure, why not? Just be aware that other gangs have advanced beyond your starting area, and he was perfectly fine. We set him up at 2,400 credits to build his gang, and he decided to throw it down for the very first time ever in Necromunda. So we're going to see exactly how he stacks up in this scenario. So that being said, we're going to play some background music real quick. As the music is playing, we will show you photos of both gangs and their rosters. If you want to, of course, go to different parts of the video, you can check down the description box down below. I do have my timestamps down there, so that way you can click and navigate to the part of the video that interests you the most. So that being said, let's get this video on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So first of all, let's talk about the scenario real quick. The scenario is Scavenge. The idea is supposed to be that both my friends get D3 plus 7 custom method members to fight for their crew. For my buddy Senior Chang, because he is a little bit of a handicap, because he's just starting out, he gets his entire gang, while my little sister, the Kiddo, gets 3 D3 plus 7 people that she chooses for her gang. The idea is supposed to be that there are 2d6 loot counters on the tabletop. In this case, there are 10 of them. And what ends up happening when your fire goes within 1 inch of them, they could take a double action, which is a loot action, and they roll a d6. On a 4, 5, or 6, it means they find something useful, and you get what's called a loot token, and everything else, it becomes basically a frag bomb that you have to worry about exploding as well. The idea is supposed to be, of course, the gang who managed to get the most loot points is the winner of this one. For every loot point that is in your position, you earn D3 times 10 credits that's added to your stash for it. At the same time, your gang also earns D3 points of reputation if you manage to win the scenario. If any gang battles out, of course, it loses 1 point of reputation. And for experience, every fighter gets 1 experience points for participating in the battle report. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go ahead and talk about battle plans as well as deployments. So let's talk about the deployment as well as battle plans. As you can see, my friends are playing on a Zone Mortalis table. It is 3 wide and 2 deep. My friend Cedar Chang is on the left-hand side, while the kiddo deployed her forces from House Cawdor on the right-hand side. At the same time, you notice she got that little orange die there. The reason why is because she does have a Hive creature in her gang, and she did manage to drum out 3 Articles of Faith dice that she could use at the very beginning of the battle report as well. Now, as for the battle plans on this one, the way this is pretty much set up is that these 2 gangs are going to be just running towards each other directly the way they did it. My friends decided to do a Zone Mortalis battle, so that's exactly how they wanted to set up, and we're going to talk about exactly where their fighters are deployed. So first of all, starting up with the Lords of the Pit. So starting on the back left-hand side there, we have the Crimson Wing, followed by Howler the Cannibal King, which is a huge monster orange right there in the center. In front of him is the Old Ways, a mutant champion. In front of him is another guy named Slag as well. That is a champion's arm with a heavy stubber. Right in front of Slag is King Slender. Right next to him on the left-hand side, that is the Alkaloid, and right above him is a man called Deadhead Lee. And that pretty much makes up my friend Senior Chang's deployment on this bottom part of the battlefield. Meanwhile, on the top of the battlefield, starting from the top and working your way down on the right-hand side, that is Desolation Jones with Bloodraiser right in front of him. Right behind him on the left-hand side, that is Charlie the Choo-Choo, which is a Warp Whore. That thing is absolutely terrifying with Warp Fire Breath. Right next to him, of course, is Socket, another mutant. Right next on the bottom is another Outcast mutant champion named Master Blaster. And right behind them is another Scaly named Hiss, who's armed with a Harpoon Launcher. And that makes up Senior Chang's deployment for the Lords of the Pit. Moving up to the right-hand side, where the children of the Deep Friah are deployed, is where the little sister Kiddo put her forces. Starting in the back, on the bottom right-hand side, that is the Hive Quake. Right next to them is Malkarim, one of the Cawdor Firebrands. Right next to him is a character named Dearest Malchus, who is a Redemptor Sistren. Right in front of her is Sister Silence, which is on the left-hand side, who is another Cawdor Firebrand, and as well as another fighter named Adamar is his name. Right beneath him is the Lady of Rats, which is a Redemptionist Deaconess with an Eviscerator. And then right in front of her are 3 Juvies. Those Juvies, of course, are Bone Pickers, which are Malleus, Mordo, as well as Blade. And that makes the deployment here in the top right-hand corner of the battlefield. And make up the bottom right-hand deployment up in the front on the left-hand side. I believe that character is named Edwin the Purge. Right behind them is another character named Simeon the Summoner. Up on the top is Partner Gizburn. In the middle there, that is their leader, Levitico Bonestorm, with his Cherub Servitor, the Angel of Combustion. And on the bottom right-hand side is Cardinal Ruse, which is the Hive creature for this gang. And that makes the deployment for this one. So with deployment over with, my friends go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both of my friends roll off for priority to see which of them has initiative. So that takes right to the top of turn number 1, and my friends roll off for initiative, and the Cawdor managed to get it this time. Both Senior Chang as well as the kiddo actually tied, so that'll go again, and the kiddo managed to squeeze it off with one more additional point on top of that, so because of that, she will have the very first set of activations in the scenario. So the first thing the kiddo decides to do is a group activation, activating Levitico Bonestorm, a Redemptor Priest, who also is a group activation with Partner Gizburn as well as Edwin the Purge. And we're going to talk about exactly what happens to that group activation here in the next slide. So as you can see, the very first thing that happens is that Partner Gizburn actually moves up to the terminal on their side of the door and actually does a simple action, open the door as well, so the door does fly directly open. After that, of course, Partner Gizburn also moves through the door as well and takes a position right outside of it, covering him with a shotgun. From there, Levitico Bonestorm as well as the Angel of Combustion do a double set of movements directly towards that first barricade just outside the door, followed by Edwin the Purge as well, take out cover positions so they can go after the loot counters there in the center of the battlefield. Jumping across the tabletop, Senior Chang goes next. There's a group activation with Slag, who's a scaly arm with a heavy stubber, does a group activation with King Slender, which is one of his mutants armed with a shotgun with saw and scatter ammo, as well as gunk bombs, and has the horrific appearance. So King Slender does move up in order to fire his shotgun, does a simple action to move forward, another basic action, open fire with the shotgun, getting a 3 to hit as well as a 3 to wound, managed to hit and wound both times, as well as put no damage directly on Edwin the Purge. And unfortunately for my little sister, the kiddo, Edwin the Purge did fail his armor save, so because of that, he does take injury on that part. When they roll for the injury, he does go out of action, at the same time also suffers a grievous injury, critical injury as well, so because of that, he does have to go on a medical escort mission, otherwise he does threaten of actually dying if he doesn't get medical attention very soon. Because of that, Levitico Bonestorm does need to take a panic test. He has no problem passing his cool test. However, though, for the fighter Edwin the Purge, though, kind of a bad situation with that critical injury. If he doesn't get taken care of, he will, of course, die from lack of resources because my little sister, the kiddo, doesn't have enough credits to save him. She does, however, have a rogue doc named the Bloodletter, which is great because it can take care of Edwin the Purge, but if she suffers any other critical injuries in this battle report, she might have to pick and choose who lives and who dies. So to finish up the rest of his activation, Senior Chang then also moves up Slag, who does a double move forward behind that barricade, taking cover so that way he doesn't get shot at in his next turn as well. And that pretty much makes up the activations on this side of the tabletop. So the kiddo decides to go next and decides to activate the Lady of Rats, who once again does a group activation with the little bonepicker farmer named Blake as well. The Lady of Rats, of course, is a Redemptionist Deaconess who's armed with a Viscerator, and at the same time, Blake is also armed with twin stub guns with dum-dum rounds as well. So, starting with Blake, he must move up and over his normal wound allowance, opens fire with both of his stub guns using the twin guns blazing rules. He's 4 to hits as well as 4 to wounds, but unfortunately for my little sister though, she failed to hit him at the same time, also got an ammo roll. Failed her ammo roll as well, so because of that, she is now out of his dum-dum rounds for her stub guns as well, which is kind of bad. Now, the Blood Razor, of course, had been hit. He don't have a 5 to save, but he's perfectly fine, so no harm, no foul. So to finish up the rest of the activation, of course, Lady Rats does a move forward directly to that barricade on the left-hand side, right next to that ammo crate next to Blake, so that way she can blast anybody with her flamer from her Eviscerator if she needs to as well. And that makes up the kiddo's activation on this side of the tabletop. So going back to Senior Chang, he decides to activate the Oculoid, which is one of his mutants who's got eye stalks, he's got 180 degree vision, and he can also decide to also protect himself, gets additional bonus from partial cover. Decides to actually move up forward, have him open up with his reclaimed autogun directly against partner Gizburn. So the Oculoid does a simple move to move forward and open fire with his autogun, needing 3s to hit as well as 4 to wounds with his autoguns. Managed to hit the partner Gizburn twice as well. And actually, when it comes to the wounds on this one, also managed to put 1 wound on him as well. So that part was kind of crazy. So partner Gizburn, of course, does have to take an armor save. He only has flak armor, so he uses a 6 up to save. Unfortunately, he fails to do so. So because he only rolled injury dice, and when he does, he actually rolls a flesh wound. So it could have been a really bad result if the kiddo wasn't so lucky. So looking for the kiddo, partner Gizburn does go down with a flesh wound, so he is -1 to his toughness, which means he's easier to wound now because only toughness 2, but he can still move, he can still fight, still very much a threat at that point. He's just a little bit easier to take out of action if necessary. And I do apologize, the Oculoid was part of a group activation with the Old Ways, which is one of the champions who has close combat weapons, one of the scaly mutant, one of the mutant champions. So because of that, the Old Ways does a double movement forward directly behind that barricade, so that way he can kind of zip around his next turn and engage enemies in close combat. Going back to the kiddo, she decides to do a group activation, activating her champion, Sister Silence, who is a Cawdor Firebrand who's got mesh armor as well as a Gutter Forge cloak and a greatsword as well. She also does a group activation with Adamar, who is a Cawdor brother who's armed with a mesh armor as well as a pole arm with blunderbuss, but more importantly than that, he's got a bomb delivery rats with frag grenades as well, so both those guys get activated forward. So starting off with Adamar, he does need a 7-up in order to actually deploy his bomb rats as well. So unfortunately one of the dice fell the die roll tray, so that's why it's a little bit of a freeze there. But rolls again managed to successfully pass his intelligence test to deploy the bomb rat as well. And the way that my sister did it, she actually took Adamar, had to do a simple action, move it forward to go right next to the Lady of Rats. Now the reason why that's the case is because the Lady of Rats, of course, has a Lord of Rats skill, which means that any rats near this character have to be pushed at least 3 inches away. So the way that my sister set this up is that Adamar moves right next to the Lady of Rats, knowing that when she successfully deploys this rat automatically get pushes 3 inches automatically forward, which extends the range that this bomb rat can travel from 6 inches to potentially 9 inches. So it's a really cool idea to actually use for bomb rats. In fact, I would highly suggest actually if you're interested in using bomb rats, put it on one of your characters who can take piety as a skill and get that skill so that way you can deploy those bomb rats and cause all kinds of problems. At the same time, Sister Silence also moves up, does a move action forward directly next to that loop counter between the 2 corpse grinders, so that way she can also engage the Scavvies as well. So what ends up happening is Adamar's bomb rat does move up forward, opens fire with a frag grenade, needing 3s to wound, and puts 2 damage directly onto the Oculoid. Now the Oculoid, of course, has to take a 5-up armor save, which unfortunately he does fail to take, so because he does get injured on that one, so because he does go down as well, so that part is absolutely insane. And when he does go down, he suffers a serious injury as well as a flesh wound, so it's a really bad result, all things considered. So the rat explodes. Of course, Deadhead Leo needs to take a nerve test because his friend got seriously injured. Unfortunately for him, he needs an 8 to pass, which he fails, so because he's going to fly back 7 inches to go in the opposite directions as well. At the same time, the Oculoid is currently on the ground, bleeding right now with a serious injury, as well as a flesh wound put on top of him, so now he's only toughness 2. It's not a really good day to be a Scavvy at this point. And to make matters worse, Deadhead Lee goes right back directly where he came from on the deployment area and ends up going right in front of Howler the Cannibal King as well as Crimson Wing, which means that these guys' path is now blocked by Deadhead Lee because he is panicking, which means these 2 fighters can't go anywhere because behind them there is no exit for them to go around this wall. They're just kind of stuck exactly where they're at. So that was really telling for my buddy Senior Chang, so that part was kind of rough. So in response, Senior Chang decides to activate Hiss, which is his champion, mutant champion, who's one of his scalies, and does a group activation course with Master Blaster, which is, it's Master Blaster with the Socket Head, which is one of his mutants with a horrific appearance. Starting off with Sockhead. Sockhead does a simple action move directly towards a door to his right hand side. Another simple action open the door so that way they can get to the 3 loot caskets directly inside of that vault area. And Hiss on the other hand, of course, does a move action going directly towards the Oculoid. The reason why is because Senior Chain plans on using Hiss in order to provide additional medical support in the recovery phase at the end phase. That way the Oculoid can get back on his feet again. For the kiddo's next activation, she decides to activate Malkarium, her Cawdor Firebrenner's armed with a heavy crossbow. He's also got a suspensor on that crossbow, so that way he can fire it as a basic action. She takes a basic action to do an aim with that weapon, so that way Malkarium gets a +3 to hit. And the reason why is because he's firing at long range, he -1 to his ballista skill on top of that, so she basically took the aim action to kind of negate that modifier. Now when she opens fire, of course, with her grenade launcher, with her heavy crossbow, it's going to hit directly at her opponents. And when she does so, she opens up with a 5-inch blast template with frag rounds. She's going to need a 4 up to wound Desolation Jones, as well as 4 up to wound the Blood Razor, as well as Charlie the Choo Choo. She's going to require 5 up to wound that Warp Horror as well. As you can see, all 3 fighters, Blood Razor, as well as Desolation Jones and Charlie the Choo Choo, get hit by that massive 5-inch blast template right in front of them. Almost managed to clip the Master Blaster, but luckily for my friend here, Chang, Master Blaster was about a ½ inch away, so he managed to just barely escape that blast template. So all 3 of those guys get hit with a shower of shrapnel and fire. Unfortunate for the kiddo though, when she did hit these guys, she did fail to wound all 3 of these guys, so all 3 are currently pinned. But you know, all things considered though, she was also limiting the number of activations they could take as well, because in the game of Necromunda, pinning is winning, so that's a really good thing for her to have directly on these 3 fighters, especially since they're so dangerous. But the kiddo is not done yet, because Malkarium also does a group activation with the Hive Quake, which is the Stake Shambler right next to him. Decides to open fire on those 3 guys with this twin-linked stub gun. These 4 to hit those guys, firing a Strength 4, damage 2, -1 AP. Also gets 3 rapid fire dice on that as well. So as you can see here, the kiddo decides to throw her dice, open fire at that as well. Managed to get 6 shots off with her gun. Unfortunately, though, her die fell out of the die tray. She did have to reroll again. Managed to get 5 on that one, so because managed to hit all those guys 6 times. So she decides to put 2 in Charlie the Choo Choo, as well as 2 into Blood Razor, as well as 1 in Desolation Jones as well. So that part's absolutely insane. Yeah, we rerolled that second set of fire dice because unfortunately the first one got knocked over. We didn't realize it was not the case. So she does open fire with her bullets directly into these guys as well. Unfortunately, when it comes to her wounds, though, she does manage to get through a couple of these wounds, but of course at the same time though, armor saves pretty much protects Blood Razor as well as Desolation Jones. Charlie the Choo Choo, however, suffers a wound on this one, and the reason why he suffers a wound is because unfortunately my little sister made the mistake of forgetting to realize that it's actually 2 damage with Heavy Stubber. Charlie the Choo Choo should actually be carrying 2 wounds on him instead of just 1. So now, to be outdone by the Cawdor, my buddy Senior Chang decides to activate Master Blaster. Now, Master Blaster is a mutant with multiple appendages. The idea is supposed to be is that he's got 2 pulverizers from the House of Goliath weapons list for his close combat weapons, and he's also got a little guy on his back who's talking to him, who's also packing a hand flamer. So because he decides to do a move activation, so that way he moves closer directly to Sister Silence, another basic action, open fire with his hand flamer. So because that Master Blaster moves up, opens fire with this template, manages to hit both Sister Silence as well as Blade, needs 4 up in order to wound both of those guys as well, so because he decides to throw his dice to see exactly what ends up happening. Unfortunately for my friend Senior Chang, though, he does fail to wound both of them, so they're both perfectly fine. The reason why is because they save on armor saves, or he just fails to wound one of them, so because of that part is kind of sad. He does manage to pin Sister Silence, however, so she's perfectly fine, but she does pass her Blaze test. On the other hand, though, however, Blade, though, does fail his Blaze test because he does catch on fire. We're going to talk about exactly what ended up happening to him here in a second. So as you can see in the aftermath, Sister Silence, of course, is injured at this point. So she is just kind of laying on the ground and just kind of pinned at this point. But Blake, though, he flew back 12 inches the opposite way. He went directly into a really bad part of the board. As you can see, in his panic of being set on fire, Blake ran too far back and actually landed directly on that void on the Zone Mortalis table. So because he immediately goes out of action. And when he rolled it for the last injury table on this one, actually rolled an out cold action. So my little sister, the kiddo, got really lucky on this fighter. He's going to just miss out the rest of this battle for it, but he'll make a full recovery. But he went screaming into the darkness while lit on fire, which is pretty metal, all things considered. So in response, the kiddo activates Dearest Malchus, which is her Redemptionist brethren, sister who's armed with a grenade launcher. Takes a basic action aim with a grenade launcher, so that way she gets 3 up to hit with a grenade launcher, and a 2 up to wound, so managed to hit Master Blaster as well as wound him as well. Because she's firing with crack grenades, Master Blaster does not get an armor save at all, and takes 2 damage right off his profile, so we roll up on the injury dice, and that one rolled a serious injury, so Master Blaster is currently down. As you can see, Master Blaster is currently on the ground and is bleeding out at the same time as well. He is seriously injured, and luckily for my friend Senior Chang, he did manage to pass his initiative test. He didn't have to worry about Master Blaster falling directly into that corpse grinder and getting put out of action that way as well. But he is in a really precarious spot because all that needs to happen is some random Cawdor fighter charge into this guy, and you can put him out of action with a coup de grace. So going back to Senior Chang, of course, my friends do kind of make a little bit of a mistake in this photo, so I'll talk about that here in a second. The mistake was that Senior Chang actually activated two fighters in this round. He activated Blood Razor as well as Charlie the Choo-Choo. For Blood Razor, he had to with basic action, get back on his feet again to escape pinning, and another basic action to move out of the engagement area so that he doesn't get shot at anymore. And he's going to do exactly the same thing with Charlie the Choo-Choo. Unfortunately, though, Senior Chang made a mistake on this one. He wasn't supposed to activate both those guys, but my friends didn't catch it, and neither did I, to be perfectly honest. So because that, Charlie the Choo-Choo gets on his feet again and moves directly next to the corpse grinder in order to support his, so that way he can put his assault and open fire with his warp fire breath directly onto the Cawdor right in front of him. So going back to the kiddo, she decides to activate Malleus, which is one of her bone pickers, decides to do a simple action move forward and a basic action open fire with his stub gun and dum-dum rounds directly into the old ways. Malleus, of course, will need a 4-up to hit because he's within the short range modifier and manages to hit as well as a 4-up to wound as well, so does manage to hit with them with both his guns as well. Does have to take an ammo check in order to make that happen as well. Unfortunately for my little sister kiddo, she does fail her ammo check, so because she does run out of ammunition for her stub guns. And she does roll to wound, but unfortunately for her though, she fails her wound for both of her stub guns, so all I managed to do is just kind of bounce off the armor of the old ways. So the old ways takes 2 dum-dum rounds directly to his chest, but lucky for him though, his armor holds out and he's just currently on the ground catching his breath because, you know, dum-dum rounds fired at a massive 44 caliber stub gun will knock the wind out of you, no matter how much armor you're wearing. Senior Chang then activates Desolation Jones. He does a basic action, get back on his feet again, another simple action move next to the Master Blaster, so that way he can lend him medical assistance during the end phase for the recovery rolls. And the kiddo also activates the last of her fighters, which that character's name is Mordo. So Mordo decides to do move activation in order to put the assault directly onto the Scavvies. Moves 12 inches forward and puts himself in a perfect position right in front of Sister Silence, so that way, in case of Master Blast doesn't manage to make the recovery roll and is still seriously injured, then she can send this fighter in and actually take that fighter out of action with a coup de grace. So pretty smart moves for my little sister, all things considered. And at the same time, because Howler the Cannibal King as well as Crimson Wing can't actually leave because Deaded Lee is freaking out right in front of them, they lose their activation markers. All they can do really is just kind of stand around because there's nothing else they can really do. So the last 2 fighters left is Simeon the Summoner, and Simeon the Summoner decides to use his Article of Faith, and that Article of Faith is "And Flame shall burn away his sins." They need a 3-up on the Article of Faith dice. My sister didn't want to take a chance, so she took 2 dice in order to make that happen. What that means, he automatically gets blaze attacks on his close combat attacks now. Adamar then does a double action. Simeon the Summer does a double action to charge forward directly into the old ways. He has 5-inch movement allowance. Of course, he needs an additional D3. So because rolls a perfect 3 on that one, this guy's got an 8-inch charge. He also got a 2-inch weapons trait for the versatile trait on his Cawdor pole arm, so he is well within striking distance. The kiddo, of course, just stopping short of actually hitting him, so that way she gets they use the versatile trait on the pole arm. Unfortunately for Cawdor fighters, if they're actually base-to-base contact with the enemy and they try to use the pole arm, they actually lose -1 to hit against. So she keeps her fighter at distance, so that way it doesn't really actually affect her hits to hit him. From there, of course, Simeon the Summer has 2 attacks, needs 4s in order to hit, managed to hit once as well, so because it does manage to go past the weapon skill, and also managed to get a 3-up to wound, rolling a perfect 6 on that one. So because of the old ways, does need to take a 3-up armor save, which he passes no problem, but he also needs to take a blaze test as well, which he's not going to pass, so because of that, he does catch on fire on that one. And I believe the old ways actually runs, I think, 7 or 8 inches forward, so he goes directly next to the wall and just kind of stops just short of actually hitting that wall. So he is laying right next to the Occuloid, who is currently bleeding out, and of course the old ways is currently on fire. So this is a very violent battle report, all things considered. And with that takes us directly to the end phase. I do apologize for this. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Cardinal Ruse, because I forgot to take a photo of this, was the High Preachers right there in the middle of that blackened out quadrant on the bottom right hand side. He does a double action to check that loot counter and actually managed to find a piece of loot in that as well. So he managed to capture that. So I do apologize. I forgot to take a photo of that earlier. So in the end phase, my sister the kiddo decides to try to generate faith dice. Unfortunately, just kind of flubbed her rolls for the most part. Only managed to get 2 more dice back. So she's back to her original starting 3 Article of Faith dice that she can use in order to get miracles off. And unfortunately, when it came to the recovery test, Master Blaster actually goes out of action, suffers a grievous injury, also known as convalescence. I'm sorry, it's called convalescence. That's what it's originally called. I forgot about that because they updated it. So because he will go out of action, now the only penalty of going out of action this way is that he can't make a post-battle action sequence, but he will be able to actually make a full recovery on this one. And I have to thank one of my YouTube viewers because they're the one that actually left a comment on my very first battle report about that. So we've been making mistakes about the convalescence rule, so I do apologize for that. But, you know, maybe you need to read those rule books a little bit more and, you know, pay attention to what we're actually doing. So originally, Occulate was going to go out of action, but because his was already able to give out medical assistance, actually re-rolled and actually got a flesh wound instead, so the Occulate does flip over. He is only toughness 1, which means he's about as tough as a wet piece of tissue paper, but he can still fight, he can still shoot, still very much a threat. And finally, Deadhead Lee did manage to recover his nerve test due to Howl of the Cannibal King. So because of that, Howl of the Cannibal King basically just kind of backhanded Deadhead Lee in the face, said, "Get it together, man!" And the mutant basically snapped out of his little fugue state and decided to soldier on for the most part. And that takes us to the end of turn number 1. As you can see, my friends are now pretty much squaring up a huge melee of gunfire taking place right in the middle section of the Zone Mortalis tile. There's not much cover to be had directly into that, so there is, of course, a linear problems you gotta worry about with those corpse grinders at the top that you're gonna worry about, but there's still a lot of loot counters still left on the tabletop. So my friends are not going after loot counters, they're just going straight for each other, trying to bring the pain. So very, very aggressive battle report so far, and I'm really loving the way that's going out so far with all the violence taking place. So that being said, we're going to go directly to the top of turn number 2, and both of my friends roll off for initiative to see which of them will be going first. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 2. My friends roll off for initiative on this one, and once again, my little sister, the kiddo, managed to get the priority on this one, so she will be activating first in turn number 2. So for first activation, my little sister activates the Lady of Rats, who then also does a group activation with Adamar. So Adamar, of course, decides to take an intelligence test to deploy a Bomb Rat. The Bomb Rat, of course, manages to survive his intelligence test. As you can see, the little Skaven fighter there is 3 inches in front of the Lady of Rats because that's how that rule works. So he's right in front of that lady, and he gets to move 6 inches forward in order to go off with a frag grenade. So the little Skaven Bomb Rat goes directly towards Charlie the Choo-Choo as well as Hiss and explodes as well. Needs to get a 5 to wound Hiss as well as a 5 to wound Charlie the Choo-Choo. Fails to wound Charlie the Choo-Choo and also manages to wound Hiss as well, but Hiss was able to pass his armor save, so no harm, no foul actually came from that. So Hiss is currently pinned, but what ended up happening is that Charlie the Choo-Choo, though, needed to take an initiative test, which he fails because he does go falling directly into the corpse grinder. He goes automatically out of action on that one. Of course, when they roll to see exactly what happens to him, he actually rolls convalescence on that one. But luckily for my friends here, Chain, though, he can ignore that rule because the Warp Whore is a Warp Denizen, which means the only lasting injury result he actually has to worry about is being dead with the 66 roll. But other than that, though, things are not looking very good for my friends here, Chain. That's 2 fighters of his that's already down right now. And man, my sister's using those bomb rats to great effect. But my sister's not done yet. To finish up the activation, she says the Lady of Rats forward, no more movement allowance, opens fire with her Eviscerator going directly into Hiss as well as the Oculoid and the Old Way. She needs a 5-up to wound Hiss, a 1-up to wound the Oculoid, as well as a 4-up in order to wound the Old Ways as well. She managed to wound, I believe, the Old Ways as well as Hiss on that part, but she managed to put the Oculoid, though, managed to get that guy pretty bad and also put him out of action as well. So that part is absolutely horrific for my buddy Senior Chang on that one. We do have a couple of armor saves being succeeded from both Hiss as well as the Old Ways, but the Oculoid, though, he is in a world of hurt. Actually rolls a 66 on his injury die because of that, so he is DRT. Which, of course, dead right there, so the Oculoid does go out of action, suffering a death result as well. Also getting another bonus experience point for the Lady of Rats for actually killing a guy as well. Just like that, the very first death in our campaign has taken place, and unfortunately, it's for my buddy Senior Chang and his Scavvy gang. So, to avoid being traffic jammed this time, my friend Senior Chain decides to do a group activation with Howler. The Cannibal King does a group activation with Deadhead Lee as well. Deadhead Lee does a simple action move forward, a basic action with fire with his wild bow directly into the Lady of Rats. But unfortunately for him, though, he misses a shot, so no harm, no foul there. So unfortunately, that would have been kind of cool if he managed to do that, because then the Lady of Rats would have to take an initiative test to see if she fell into the corpse grinder if she actually got hit. But unfortunately for my buddy Senior Chain, though, he failed to hit her. And to complete his group activation as well, Howler the Cannibal King does a movement directly behind that barricade, right next to Slag to the right of him. At the same time, Crimson Wing also does a move directly towards the wall, right next to the Old Way, so that way he can provide some support if you need to. And that pretty much makes up my buddy Senior Chang's movements on this side. And because things are working so well for the first time, my sister decides to activate Malkarim, her champion, does a basic action to aim with his heavy crossbow. Now this time around, he only needs a 2-up to hit because he's not within the long range range of his heavy crossbow. So he decides to open fire with frag shell directly into Bloodwing. Not only is he going to manage to hit Crimson Wing, he's also going to manage to hit Deadhead Lee as well as the Old Ways. He's going to need 3-up to wound those guys as well. So as you can see in this photo, that massive 5-inch template goes off and manages to hit Deadhead Lee as well as Crimson Wing at the same time. Also hits the Old Ways as well. Hitting those guys that Strength 4 blast template as well. She was actually pretty close of almost actually hitting Hiss, who's the guy directly on the top. Just basically missed it by half an inch. So those guys get hit with the shrapnel on that one. Now she does manage to put a wound directly onto the Old Ways, and she also does manage to pin Crimson Wing. But the real kicker here though is he actually managed to cut right through the armor of Deadhead Lee and actually puts that guy out of action. And to make things absolutely worse as well, when they roll for the out of action on this one, Deadhead Lee rolled a 55, so he has been captured by the children of the Deep Friah. So because of that, my friend Senior Chang is going to have to, of course, try to save his fighter from the clutches of the children of the Deep Friah. The kiddo decided that I'm not going to give your fighter back, I'm going to keep him. Just because we want to be able to play a public execution scenario in order to save this guy. So we'll talk about that later on, of course, when we get to the post game. Now, because Malkarim is a Cawdor champion, he also group activates the Hivequake. Now, the Hivequake can't shoot anybody who's located at, so he does a simple movement to move directly forward, so that way he can see directly who he wants to shoot at. And he's able to do this and still fire his twin-linked heavy stubber because he does have the intelligent control special rule. But the only problem is he loses -1 to hit against. So he is shooting at long range. He also has -1 to hit against, so he needs a 6 in order to hit his targets. But if he does manage to hit his target, though, which in this case is Howler the Cannibal King, he'll have to wound him on a 5-up. The crazy thing is, though, the kiddo managed to hit the Howler, the Cannibal King, managed to hit him 5 times, and she rolls a 6 to hit. So because he does get hit 5 times with those bullets, all those, of course, being a Strength 4, causing 2 damage, -1 AP. So a whole series of dice is rolled directly towards the Crimson King on that one. He does have to take a 4-up armor save, as well as a 4-up save with his 5-up phase save with his reactor field. But as you see, though, fails to do that. So because he suffers 2 wounds right on top of that. I believe he's 3 wound characteristic because he's also got the vast bulk mutation, but at that point my friend Senior Chang freaks out and he pretty much decides to call at this point. And to be perfectly honest, you cannot blame my friend Senior Chang for being cautious at this point because it's all fun and games until your leader goes out of action. So because he decides to concede the game, and my little sister, the kiddo, managed to win a second game this time. So Cawdor managed to snake another victory out of the clutches of defeat, at the same time also lays claim to the other loot counters on the tabletop as well. But we're going to talk about exactly what happens here in a second because this battle report is now officially over, so we're going to go directly to the post game.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Alright, so now it's time for the after action report for Dark Uprising Battle Report number 7. It was a Scavenge Scenario fought between my friends the Kiddo as well as Senior Chang. So first of all, let's talk about the Lords of the Pit of the Scavvies, played by my buddy Senior Chang. So for his bonuses on this one, for being an underlying gain, he does get +1 reputation added to his gang because of Hard as Nails benefit. At the same time, his leader, Howler the Cannibal King, also earned 3 experience points for the No Gods or Masters special, which means that his leader, so long as they participate and don't go out of action, they earn D3 experience points. So that part's kind of cool. So for the injuries on this one, Master Blaster does go into convalescence, so because it makes a full recovery, no problem. Same thing with Charlie the Choo Choo, he also goes into convalescence, but ignores it due to the Warp Dennis' special rule, so he's perfectly fine. However, Deadhead Lee, got captured by the children of the Deep Friah, and of course the Lords of the Pit will have to go and save him now. And at the same time, the Oculoid actually ended up being killed, blown apart by a bomb rat of all things. Sorry, not bomb rat, being set on fire from an eviscerator of all things. So because of that, he is eliminated off the roster as well. While the Lords of Pit did, of course, earn experience points with their fighter, though no one advanced at this point. But from their settlements, though, they're able to recruit a brand new mutant named Oculoid number 2, which is actually kind of lucky. Also comes with the Ice Stalks mutations as well, because automatic comes with 25 credits worth of equipment. So he does come with the Ice Stalks mutation. At the same time, he also is packing Man-Stopper rounds for his auto pistol, and at the same time also has 50 credits from that territory. From the Reclamation Zone, of course, they could take 10 credits away from weapons and equipment they decide to buy from their house list, and at the same time manage to drum up 40 credits, and from the Wasteland territory, they will get 30 credits from that. So in the trading post, the Lords of the Pit managed to drum up 120 credits from their territories, and they spent 105 of those credits to purchase photo goggles for Hiss, Slag, as well as Master Blaster as well. They also spent 10 credits in order to purchase reclaimed auto pistols for both Hiss and Slag so that they could use it for their weapons as well. And they took their 5 remaining credits and put it back directly in the stash. And what they also did is they also took their spare reclaimed auto pistol as well as spare auto pistol as well as mesh armor. They gave it to Oculoid number 2 just because his predecessor did die, of course, but they do get to keep his weapons and equipment for that part. For the reputation, the Lords of the Pit did earn one because of their participation in this campaign week. At the same time, they also got another one for Hard as Nails as well, which increased the reputation total from 1 to 3 points in total. The new gang record now is at 0 wins as well as 1 loss, and the new gang rank now is at 2,525 points. At the same time, my friend Zero Chang will have to fight my little sister once again because he does have to do a public execution scenario in order to rescue his captured fighter away from the clutches of the Deep Friah. And speaking of which, let's talk about the Children of the Deep Friah, which is a Cawdor game that is played by my little sister, the kiddo. So first of all, let's talk about her bonuses. Her bonus for this one is called Lord Helmwar's Coffers. That's her benefit from actually being on the side of order, which means the gang can reroll any dice when determining the amount of credits gained as part of a scenario, and my little sister is going to be able to use that ability quite well because she was able to roll for those 10 loot counters that she was able to capture from actually keeping those on the battlefield for herself. So, unfortunately for the kill, though, was not without a little bit of sacrifice. Edwin the Purge, of course, suffered a critical injury in the scenario, but goes on a medical escort mission. But because the gang does have a rogue doc named the Bloodletter, the Bloodletter actually works as manager, actually puts Edwin the Purge on convalescence. So because Edwin the Purge will make a full recovery no problem, and he'll be able to participate in his next scenario as well as that. And luckily, of course, Blake also suffered an alcohol result in spite of being on fire and falling down a bottomless pit on the battlefield. Seems like he got his nerve back, made a full recovery, so he'll be perfectly fine as well. Now for advancements, unfortunately, while my little sister did earn a bunch of experience in this battle report, none of her fighters advanced at this time. From her territories, from her settlement territory, she was able to recruit a new zealot named Sister Rabina, who was a redemptionist zealot as well. Sister Rabina automatically came with an incombustible halberd as well as a stub gun, and at the same time also managed to drum out 30 credits from that settlement territory as well. From the thermal vent territory, she rolled a 6 because when the Purge makes a full recovery no problem, and also earns 90 credits on top of that. And at the same time, from her wasteland territory, she was able to drum up 20 credits from that piece of territory. From her half level territory, she was able to increase her reputation by 5 additional points, managed to secure 60 credits from that territory, and from her wall outpost, also managed to secure 30 credits from that piece of territory as well. At the trading post, she was able to draw 230 credits from her territories and was able to secure 90 credits from the scenario as well. So because of that, she also managed to get 320 credits in total. Those 90 credits really pushed her over the edge, especially since she was able to reroll a lot of the values that she was getting from those loot counters, by the way. So with the 320 credits, she spends 110 credits in order to purchase mesh armor and gutter forged cloaks and eviscerator, as well as dum-dum rounds for Sister Rabina. So now Sister Rabina has mesh armor, she has a gutter forged cloak, giving that 4 up armor save, 5 up ward save against environmental effects. She has an eviscerator, which is a dangerous weapon by itself with a flamethrower, which this game has 3 of those now. She's also got dum-dum rounds for stubble gun rounds as well, so she is quite deadly as well. So because of that, she also decided to spend 90 credits to purchase mesh armor for Dearest Malchus, Evan the Purge, Partner Gisburn, Adamar, Simeon the Simoner, as well as the Hivequake. So now all those fighters, of course, have 5 up armor saves now. So continuing on their purchasing, she gave the 4 sets of the 6 sets of flak armor that she had left over to Malleus, Baphomet, Mordo, and Blake. So now all 4 of those bone pickers have 4 armor saves. And she also spent another 40 credits for incendiary charges for Adamar's bomb rats. So now Adamar can put frag grenades, and now he can put incendiary charges to set people on fire, making him even more dangerous with those bomb rats. She also spent another 90 credits in order to purchase gutter forged cloaks for Levitico Bonestorm, the Lady of Rats, Edwin the Purge, as well as Partner Gisburn. So now those fighters all have 4 up armor saves, and now they also have 5 up ward saves against environmental effects as well. Those gutter forged cloaks, man, they're worth their weight in credits. Finally, the kiddo then sold her last 2 sets of flak armor and was able to drum out 20 credits from those, and she spent 15 credits to give a gutter forged cloak for the Hivequake and put the remainder of her credits back directly into the stash. For reputation, she was able to get 1 for this campaign week, as well as 5 from her territory. She also earns another 3 reputation points on top of that from the scenario, giving her a grand total of 9. When combined with her previous set of reputation, brings up to a total of 17 points of reputation in total. So, word is getting around about the Children of the Deep Friah. My little sister's new record now is at 2 wins and 0 losses, and her new gang right now is at 2,795 points. And because she decides to capture Deadhead Lee, she decides that she's going to actually make my friend Senior Chang go through a public execution scenario, so that he's got to save his poor mutated friend, because the children of the Deep Friah will love nothing more than to burg the mutant in the Deep Friah and actually destroy it in the name of the Emperor. So stay tuned for that scenario, because that will be coming soon as a sequel to this battle report. So that's good for those of you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is valuable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good for you guys. I will catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.